Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here to review Danny Phantom, Season 1, Episodes 1 through 3. So, I have, of course, been gone from YouTube for a number of days, but I'm back. So, I had, of course, gone on and had the channel actually doing surprisingly well. So, I decided that I wanted to go on and take the time away to just clean up thumbnails, to make them look better. And it seemed that that was even very much a benefit of the channel to just start doing that. So I then had gone on to uh, want to make thumbnails look better, but I only have a certain amount of items in my closet to be able to fill that quota. So I, in turn, started to look into stuff like Temu that could give me free items if I grinded for hours upon hours of my life. And that is to be a miserable adventure, but then also it sometimes is to be rewarding. So maybe at one point, if this channel does do well and I can actually give a goal to this channel, it would really be just to finally one day just have a shopping spree instead of going on and grinding for hours to get stuff for thumbnails or stuff that I can eventually lend uh, to having this uh, look cosmetically pleasing in some way better, or if I can go on and just get one bit of content that just does immaculately well, then I won't have to go on and just come up with a number of ways to uh, have to look a certain way in thumbnails. And that will be great. If I can just slap a Nickelodeon t-shirt on my chest and have that be a coverall and the channel just do well. Yeah. So, but shopping spree is just also bizarrely how I was to go on and find out about Danny Phantom in some ways. Because, in all honesty, I'd gone on and seen maybe one episode of Fairly Odd Parents, and then I'd heard about Danny Phantom, but I never went on to look into it. Simply because I was like, okay, this guy looks just like the Fairly Odd Parents character. I'm like, is it the same show? That's honestly what I said in my mind. So that's probably why I didn't tune in, is because I thought it was the exact same show, but some kind of weird, goofy, grown up sequel to it. I don't know why. Um, but so, come to find out, the person who did Fairly Odd Parents also did this show, and it was a guy named Butch. And I had seen some interviews and seen how he came up with the show, which I really loved. How he like took this road trip to come up with the idea of the show, and how he was talking about like Johnny Quest and Ghost Rider and Ghostbusters. Probably he saw the real Ghostbusters one, not the extreme one, because that's what I saw. And he was to go on and just talk about all these shows and all these things that made him come up with this idea. And I was like, heck yeah, good, good. Like this is such a great story. It's so entertaining. And when also me looking at this show, I can do the same, and it's rather interesting in that avenue. Uh, but so how I was to go on and be reminded of Danny Phantom was because I had simply had gone on to watch a YouTube channel while I was grinding way too often for Temu stuff. And I'd seen this YouTube channel called Comfort Cartoons, where this person goes on to these shopping sprees to these thrift stores and try and find as much Nickelodeon or cartoonish things of any nature and what have you. And sometimes it's also comic book stuff as well, or Power Rangers. Anyways, uh, which I've seen far too much of. And eventually, randomly, while I'm consistently going through these processes of these videos, I would just randomly see at some points Danny Phantom. I'm like, okay, out of all of these shows and all these things that he had to have thrifted for, I've never heard of Danny Phantom before. So I was like, okay, let's look into this because it's the one thing that I hadn't seen. So, and then also, I just wanted to look more into what the show was, and finding the actual creator on YouTube, Butch, was just a really interesting avenue to just see them just break this show down and talk about it. So, uh, and just kind of fall in love with that process of just having something behind the scenes to talk about here. And also the guy that does the voice for Danny saying that at some points he had people wanting him to do the voice. I'll get all these women that wanted me to do the voice. It's like, good for him. Um, yeah, hopefully he did like cameos and all these other things and just kind of made something out of it. I hope, because good for him. But anyways, so Danny Phantom, what is this show about for somebody who has never heard of this show? And probably for people who have waited 6 minutes for me to actually talk about this show. So we have a character that is half human, half ghost. And like this can go on and remind me of a number of slamming comparisons that are probably going to be chock block full through here, and then also probably at some points through the review. Because like the intro like reminds me very much of like the Freakazoid intro, but then also when going into this show, I'm like, okay, like this feels kind of like a dumbed down Ben 10 show because at some point Ben 10 gets the alien like ghost freak. So I'm like, yeah, like Ben 10 reminds me so much of this show. But then also, and again, like none of this is going to be like a negative or a slam against this show for me to want to compare it. It's just like I'm trying to come up with the process of talking about the show. And also, I've seen like Ghostbusters, both the real Ghostbusters and Extreme Ghostbusters, and like we of course have like the trap to capture the things per every episode or for most episodes, and like they have like the portal that is kind of like the containment unit, and yeah, so and then of course we have like the live action show Doom Patrol, which has Negative Man, which very similar to Danny Phantom. But so, as well as anime's Bleach and Mob Psycho 100, which is kind of really only comparisons just because it's goofy, fun antics, which is kind of what this show just does. Or the live action show Reaper, which is a bounty hunter that gets these weird adamant objects that they have to capture souls to be sent back into hell. Yeah, very fun show if you've never seen Reaper. I had reviewed the pilot at some point, but again, like just just try and find the show Reaper. It's really fun. So, and I'm sure there's probably going to be a billion other comparisons that I'm probably going to be talking about through this whole thing. So, uh, but I really wanted to go on and compare all of this stuff to this show just because it's like, yeah, I probably could go on and watch all these things, but when I was to actually watch the pilot episode of this show, I was so hooked. I was so glued. At no point in the pilot was I just immediately clicking to just be like, okay, like when is this episode gonna end so I can just move on to the next episode, move on to the next episode, so then I can just be done with this. No, that was never that adventure. I was going on. I'm like, man, there's a lot of time that's just passing through. I'm like, I'm really enjoying this. I'm really captivated by what's going on here, even though it's probably a dumbed down version of a lot of things that I'm familiar with. Still, like, I'm going on and just enjoying the ride. I'm enjoying this adventure. We also even have some points where Danny, uh, like, has lost like his legs and then his legs become like a spring on the bottom of him. I'm like, that looks like the genie Aladdin. And yeah, like, so I'm thinking, like, this character could possibly go on and have just endless possibilities to try to combat these foes for episode to episode. But I wish that they could have gone on with the ghost thing a lot more. It feels like I'm just getting a lot of just like these trinkets or gadget usages. And I'm like, when are we going to go on and do more with Danny having these like ghostly spirit abilities? Or I'm thinking like he's going to turn into like Mr. Fantastic, ghost style, or like a Green Lantern kind of character, somewhat. Um, or maybe he's just gonna have these weird, goofy gadgets that do these really interesting things per episode to episode. I'm still gonna be interested and hooked into what they do here. I also like the fact that we have Danny who touches things, and then everything that he touches also becomes like a ghost, also. So he can touch another person, and that other person becomes a ghost. I thought that that was a really clever idea that whoever really created. I'm sure it's probably Butch because he probably came up with the whole thing all on his own. Um, but also, uh, the reason why I was actually really hooked on this show is because at some point in my own mind, without realizing it, I had come up with a character somewhat similar, where, um, like the whole thing where like Danny, like normal Danny, has like black hair, and then the ghost version of itself has white hair. Like, I kind of came up with that same kind of idea in my mind, where you have like a character that has like a shadow version of himself, and when he's to go on and kind of like it was more about like mirror stuff, where you can go on and look at the mirror and the person looking back at you isn't the exact same, and they're going through their own problems in their mirror world, and you have to go on and probably help them out at some points in time. And bizarrely, when you and that other person are kind of sharing this moment at this mirror, like they're doing the exact same things, but when they look away from the mirror, they go on their own separate journeys and they do their own separate stuff. But they help one another out, or they combine together to become this just entity, which I never really came up with a clear name besides some of the goofy stuff that I came up with like Uncommon Con, or like the timeline Power Rangers video that I came up with, where I kind of just wanted to smash a bunch of just stuff together and see if it all just became an interesting story that people may have seen a video or talked about or whatever. Um, but I don't want to go on and just kind of rehash all that stuff here because I've already taken too much time talking about so many other things. So, Danny Phantom, I would go on and say is strongly entertaining. And I do feel that Danny Phantom, in a fun, goofy way, is great. These episodes I thought were really fun. Could probably even go on and remind me of like Venture Bros, because I'd seen maybe a handful of episodes of those, or like of course like Scooby Doo, hello Raggy, and whatever. Um, but yeah, so uh, I probably at one point could have gone on and done a way better Scooby voice, but I'm not doing that today. So uh, so yeah, so these three episodes were entertaining, and there was probably no real thought put into the ghosts, I feel. Um, but then also, like, every time I was to watch, like, one of these episodes, I was kind of reminded of, like, a real Ghostbusters episode, or I was reminded of just, like, stuff like Ben 10, like, especially the one-of-a-kind ghost in that episode. Um, I was like, oh, this feels like something like coming out of Ben 10, but also I was thinking of like the DC character Lobo, and yeah, like there's so much just stuff that I can just pull and pick through the breakdown of this, and it was just so much fun. So it was so much fun. So Mystery Meat, the pilot, this goes on to have a debate about like whether a like a lunch at school should be vegan or should be meat. And in between that, there is this ghost that ends up, of course, wanting meat and ends up forcing it down people's throats in a very horrific way. And therein lies Danny needing to face off against this foe, and just becomes just this really entertaining bit of journey. And really also just these fun, goofy meat monsters that kind of reminded me of like the Batman villain Clayface. So I was like, all right, like we're just smashing all this together and we're having a good time. And also, how can you not just love like the lunch lady being a ghostly villain, whatever thing in this whole ordeal? And then we have parental bonding, and this kind of feels like Spider-Man Homecoming to me. If also, anytime you have a character in a high school thing, I immediately groan because I'm like, oh, like Spider-Man. And I never liked Spider-Man in a high school environment. I never did. But like, it's just the easiest way to do every single story that we've ever done in our lives. Um, rather than doing anything else. So just a school environment is just so easy. I'm sorry, the creator Butch, for saying that, but it's true. You couldn't have gone on and just it seemed like the sequel for whatever Danny was going to be like the college years. I'm like, man, like so like this character just never goes on and never has anything besides school to just latch on to. And I'm like, that's kind of like the shelf life of this character is just like is like there's nothing more than just school for this character. So yeah, it's that's what one thing I didn't like about the show, but that's just my personal biased opinion. But anyways, but the second episode comes off as very like Spider-Man Homecoming. Danny goes on and finds this random girl, Penelope, that he lashes onto, even though he really has a girl right in front of him all goddamn along that he should have actually gone on and danced with, but he just doesn't. Even though a lot of people are going on and calling Sam consistently Danny's girlfriend, and he's like, "No, it's not my girlfriend. She's just kind of like my friend that I just hang out with." And like they try to like square that away just so quickly because these two are just like they're having fun. They're just it doesn't really seem that they have much in common, but they just opposites attract, I guess. So like that's the interesting thing about them. Like I never quite figured out how like exactly they can relate to one another, because I think that like Tucker and uh like Danny, outside of him being a ghost, like they have, I think, more of like a geeky computer um like gadget whatever connection, whereas like I think Sam is to be kind of like the person who can kind of relate to Danny for him being a ghost and probably like the supernatural and stuff like that, which Sam isn't really enough of that. She's supposed to be this goth girl, but again, there's like she's not like the like for Buffy the Vampire Slayer, she's not like the Giles that is giving you all this book knowledge of all this stuff. But maybe that character will maybe just become that, because there's always that kind of character in all these shows, and you have to have the stereotypical goth character that's in supernatural stuff. Like look at Extreme Ghostbusters, where you get Kylie Griffin who has the blue hair. But I love that character. And I also love Sam. I love Sam. I do. I find her enjoyable. So we then get to the last episode, which is one of a kind, where we end up getting, like, for the MCU people, the Marvel character people, we have the character that's to be like the collector, and he wants to go on and get all these like unique items and like stow them away somewhere. And then you also have like the DC comic book character Lobo that is to be this bounty hunter and he has all this leather and black long hair most of the time, with exclusion of certain variations. And like we kind of smash that together, and we create this character for this last episode. And oh, and also we have a in the second episode a dragon and a princess, and kind of gives us video game vibes that we've always ever had. But getting back to One of a Kind, so One of a Kind just brings in like this whole like now Danny needs to study, and I'm like, okay, that's a good idea. And then they bizarrely go into just needing to go to the zoo to visit this monkey, and I'm like, why? Like, I get it. You have to have goofy fun, and everybody, I'm sure, just loves monkey humor. And I'm sure people want to go on and see like a monkey being used in a show. But to me, like, I think it starts to become like, okay, that monkey thing, I feel comes too much of the show, too much of the focus of the show. And then, like, Danny is fighting for real estate in his own episode. I'm just like, well, what's more interesting, a monkey fighting a ghost, or is it Danny fighting this ghost? Because we've already done enough of that in 2 other episodes, which is just him punching and kicking. And in this third episode, we don't have anything creative enough for him to really actually do in this episode, just to actually strategize and outsmart this thing, because this thing has much more of a backstory and has more effort put into it, more so than the other things prior. And it's like, oh, okay, cool. Um, but I also like the fact in episode 2 they're kind of also has them needing to figure out the whole dragon thing of what triggers it. And yeah, so like I say that there isn't thought put into the show, but then also like there's strategy, there's like a figuring out, there like it's not all just like chucking together and laziness and whatever. No, like I can appreciate this show for a number of things, and that's where I can go on and ultimately say every single one of these 3 episodes I feel were great. I enjoyed them all. Um, would I probably choose Ben 10 over the show? Probably. But logically I've seen so much of Ben 10 already, and where did that take me? So maybe Danny Phantom will be one of those shows that actually does um well for the channel, and I'll just be like, great, because I want to watch more of this show if people are open to it, and if the channel does well via proxy of just randomly coming into a thing of like this and talking about it and just talking about it for 23 minutes. So let's go on to full on breakdown of these episodes, because I know that that's going to take a long time. And I know that these episodes are only like what, an hour, because they're like 24 minutes each. So let's try to go on and break down these episodes the best I can in the quickest manner I can, because I know everybody just wants everything to be done quickly. Uh, so with that said, uh, yeah, I took a lot of time to really compare. But like, I care. I care, so that's why I do so. Um, and I know a lot of people probably won't understand why I take 4 hours to do one video, but I care, so I just gotta do so. That's just how I do things. And if people are not willing to listen to the whole video or good chunks of it or what, that's do whatever you like. But at the end of the day, I'm just gonna keep trying my best to figure out ways to make these videos the best I can, regardless of what uh, it ultimately means by the viewer to just be like, I'm not going to be watching 4 hours of this or 1 hour of that or whatever. Like, I get it. But I'm just gonna share my enjoyment of the show and talk about it. So with that said, let's go into this. So honestly, with this pilot, I feel like I'm missing something. It feels like I'm missing an episode somewhere. Like maybe there was like an unaired pilot that actually showed how Danny like became this ghost thing. Like they do it in the intro. They talk about it how like his parents like had this gadget that somehow made him end up being this ghost thing, but I still feel like I've lost something within this pilot episode of just going on and saying like, okay, we're just figuring out this character into this pilot instead of having this origin like we've gone on and seen in so many other superhero things that kind of tell us the origin of each one of these characters and explain it through a whole entire episode. And then maybe this show does go back and do that, but again, I'm assuming also that it's like, oh no, that's what the intro's for, and I'll just be like, okay, feel it just felt like I missed something here. Um, but again, that's just me nitpicking the f out of this show. So we have Jack that is returned to uh, Danny, Sam, and Tucker here, and he goes on, and I guess like at this Fenton Works facility, they're very open about how they're ghost hunters, and they have just all of this just equipment lying around kids of all things, and they just weirdly have this like ghost portal that just opens that just randomly unleashes ghosts, and I'm like, why do they have that? Like, if anything, they have to go on and have all these gadgets to try and find a ghost or to try and um, have a ghost like learn the language or learn a ghost language, when really all the ghosts, it seems, they speak clear English. Like they're not having like garbage ghost things or what, I don't know. But anyways, let's go back to this. So Jack is turning to these three kids and is going on to explain it like, well, hey kids, it looks like you want to hunt ghosts, huh? Well, uh, so Jack goes on and explains how he has this Fenton thermos that is to be this ghost trap that it seems that he can never go on and quite figure out how it works. Uh, or it doesn't seem to have worked yet because he's never really seen a ghost yet. But he has this belief of ghosts for some goofy reason, even though he's never seen one. And then he has a portal ghost door that has ghosts come out of it, but he's still never seen a ghost yet. And I'm so confused. If he knows a ghost comes out of the door, how is it that he's never seen one? I'm so confused, but I'm enjoying it. It's good. It's fun. It's weird. But then also, like, after we all of a sudden have this ghost come out of this portal while his dad's back's turned, because we find that Danny has a signature of knowing when ghosts are happening by this blue smoke coming out of his mouth. And I'm like, okay, that's like the quickening from all the Highlanders, when a Highlander would know when another Highlander is nearby. they would all of a sudden have this like feeling about them in their bodies to let them know. Or I guess Danny's case, he gets cold, and like the whole blue uh thing coming out of his mouth is to say that it's getting cold. I thought that would end up being white, but blue makes more sense, I guess, color wise. So as Jack's back's turned, Danny starts going on, and he's like, "Well, I'm about to go ghost," and then he changes into this phantom, and he goes on to just deck these ghosts back into this portal, and Sam and Tucker had kind of gotten smacked around by these ghosts a little bit. And by the time that Jack finally turns back, and the kids are just like, they're like, he's like, oh, okay, well, like, it seems like you kids are just very quiet now. So I'll go on and I'll just keep talking because that's just me. So he goes on and he starts talking about, like, I was born years ago in a log cabin in the woods. And I'm like, I love this. I love the randomness of this character. And I'm hoping that we're going to go on and just have more randomness of this character that just kind of punches through. And I'm like, at first he becomes this like random character, but then he becomes this more just uh, straight laced kind of goofy like that pushes so much of the agenda of his ghost hunting thing that nothing else matters. And I just find that funny. So, and then like Jack goes on and is talking about how like he wanted a pony but never got a pony. And I'm like, okay, all right. So Danny comes back and he's freaking exhausted. And so I'm like, okay, so we after that whole scene, we transition to then back to uh the Fenton household, and they're all just seemingly by the breakfast table together, and Jazz, the Danny's sister, is reading this therapy book called Surviving Adolescence Through Therapy. And we find later on in this episode that Jazz like tries to therapeutically do a breakthrough for a guy named Spike, I believe. And like he's very like, speaking of Spike, like look at his face, mohawk and needles and well, needles, like just earrings and such throughout his whole entire face. Um, so back at this breakfast discussion, which will happen here. So we have Danny that is eating his cereal, and all of a sudden, like his his hand becomes ectoplasm, or in case his hand phases and his spoon falls through his hand because his hand becomes temporarily ghost. So Danny is trying to figure out and go through the growing pains of learning this ability, as well as also within this first episode being tempted to tell his parents that he is a ghost because I guess they don't know. They created a machine to turn him into a ghost, but they do not know that he is a ghost. That's a thing that we have to just discuss here for the viewer to know what's going on with this character. And I am just like, okay, like that helps out a lot of understanding this character within this episode. God, there's so much to dissect here. So we have Jack that throws out this other gadget called the Fenton Finder, and to me, I immediately look at this and like, okay, this is like a PKE meter, or if you've seen the show Supernatural, the EMF meter thing, where they can kind of compassly try and find where a spirit, specter, ghost, or ghost or phantasm is to go on and possibly be. So yeah, I'm throwing out spectral and ghostly words because I've seen Ghostbusters a time or two, or I've seen Ghostbusters the movies, the first two like hundreds of times. So I gotta throw all that crap in here. Just like, oh yeah, I don't know what I'm talking about, but I'm throwing all these words out there because I learned what phantasm is the night before, because I remember the name. So they take this gadget, the Fenton Finder, and they start turning it on, and then like, oh hey, like this thing is telling us that a ghost is nearby. Oh wow! So they go through, and they get ever so closer and closer to then Danny, and they arrive at the location, and so both Maddie and Jack, Danny's parents, are just kind of looking at Danny, and they're like, man, this machine is obviously broken. And Danny's like, well, you know what? Maybe I should go on and explain something to you both. And Danny is to start to turn into a spirit. But then all of a sudden, we have Jazz that just breaks in. And I'm like, good, this character needs something to do in this show because she's not really used enough. And eventually we'll get to the Tucker and the Sam characters. I'm like, why do we even need any other characters? Well, we need the dad because of the gadgets, but what do we need most of these? There's so many other characters. They're just a lot of throwaway. But they are interesting. It's just a lot of throwaway. Um, it's good to just kind of throw them in, but ah, plus and negatives. There's so many plus and negatives. Um, but I love the creativity of the creator who came up with all these things to just really have so much in this show. I really appreciate that. So that's what I'm trying to say. I appreciate more of the creativity over than uh there being so much throwaway here that I'm like, okay, are we really gonna use these characters to the best of their benefit? But anyways, maybe for this episode they do. So God. So Jazz is like, well, hey, Danny, that's not all you're going to need. And so Jazz just interjects here and is just kind of saying how, since her parents are to go on and be these kind of ghost hunters and this and that, and how, like, she may only be 16, but in her mind, she's an adult, and she's going on and uh, saying that uh, Danny's mind is becoming polluted and this and that, with all of the stuff that they're going on and talking about with these ghost hunter things. And so Jazz goes on and is to say, like, well, hey, Danny, I'm going to drive you to school today. And both of the parents start looking at one another. It's like, you know what? Like, Jazz seems to be so, like, estranged to how she normally is. And I'm like, well, how would we know anything of that? Because we've never seen anything of this character up until this point. But she's acting out of character? Okay. Um, God, this is so much like me just but I need to just point this out. But the parents are going on and saying that Jazz is out of character, but here's where the comedy comes in, and I'm like, okay, this is gonna like be this fun thromp through the rest of this episode. Just say like, okay, since Jazz is not going to be seemingly in normal character, and how would we know that Jack goes into the mode of like, well, that's because she's a ghost. And then like the rest of the episode just becomes how Jack is chasing after Jazz and trying to use all of these ghost gadgetry to try and capture Jazz and like put her in a net or try to like thermos ghost trap her, and that becomes a lot of fun. That becomes a lot of fun to just be like, well, Jazz is possessed, and like it's very fun to see that they're focusing so much on Jazz and they are completely oblivious of Danny because they're like, oh no, Danny's fine. Like that is really good comedy. I love that. Like I love the misdirection of comedy where like you should be focusing on this character. He's a goat, but no, you're gonna go to the obviously normal one, and yeah, you're gonna drill into that character, which I find funny. So that's actually good points, good brownie points this day, writer, creator, and whichever of show. So we then go to Casper High. And I'm like, So we have locations that are either called Casper or called Amity, and so I'm like, okay, Amity, horror thing, and like Casper, we're kind of doing like a wink, wink, nudge, nudge for maybe the more certain other people that are to know much more about supernatural stuff, or we're maybe going and looking at wink, wink, nudge, nudge, certain generations of characters that people can get a good kick out of this while their kids are watching this show also and just think, oh, Casper High. Yeah, I know the Casper friendly ghost. All right, yeah. Like, and like while like the parents are just kind of forced to watch this with their kids, like the parents can get something out of this too. So so again, a just fantastic, just fun thing to just chuck in here as some things that people probably wouldn't notice. So we have Danny needing to confess to his friends, both Tucker and Sam here. He's like, you know what? Maybe I should go on and maybe I should try and tell my parents the truth. And it immediately all of a sudden like curves into no, like Sam has to go on and say that like no, like you shouldn't go on and do that at all. Like your parents, like they just don't understand, or like they won't believe you, or and it all of a sudden becomes about Sam and how like her parents don't understand her, and they uh like are questioning her life choices and this and that, and it just starts to become more and more about her to where Danny's like, yeah, that's great and all, Sam, but I'm going in and talk about my powers and my problems, and when did it all become about you? So we also have Danny who is realizing that like he also has to come to grips with his powers also, because at some point he's going on and just kind of sinking into the floor because half of his body becomes a ghost and his friends are kind of pulling him back. And so he's consistently going through these areas and he's phasing in and out, and he faces through this tasty snacks vending machine. And so but his friends are going on and they're telling him, it's like, well, you know what, like, so what, you're unique, unique is good. And so and also again, like Sam is trying to tell us that like what also makes her unique is the fact that she used to be this ultra recyclable vegetarian. and and here is then where also we turn around and find out something about something about Tucker. So I'm like, okay, so we're getting kind of backstory or character stuff about these characters, and they're not just going to be like these token sidekick characters that are just hanging on to Danny and just being like the man in the chair that's clicking away the keyboard and helping Danny. Like, we're gonna find out stuff about these characters right away. So I'm like, cool. Or they're not just gonna be the faceless friends that uh, that know Danny's a ghost and are gonna just like, well, hey, we have to come up with excuses for Danny to help him out. Like, they're not just gonna be just that. Uh, there's gonna be more to them. So, but we find out on the opposite spectrum that Tucker is to be this meat eater, and he can whiff off of Danny that he ate sloppy joes, and so this Tucker guy goes on and on about him being like this meat eater and being 14 years strong and this and that. So, but Sam had gone on to say, it's like, well, yeah, it's great that you love meat, but I have gone on and I have changed the menu for the cafeteria this week. And they're like, what? So they all go into the cafeteria and they find out that this week is ultra recyclable recycle blow blow we blowing out something at the end recyclo vegetarian. So they end up getting these slabs of like bread and then like turf, and they call them turf witches or turf witch, and somewhere in the later half of the episode. So we have this piece of bread and we just have a bunch of grass, and people are looking at this and like, what is this? And Sam is like, yeah, the alternative. All right, we're so we all of a sudden go back to the Fenton Works to all of a sudden have this portal open, and coincidentally, the portal opens to this lunch lady ghost that is to tie into the cafeteria. I'm like, why not just have the ghosts just come out of these areas that connect with it instead of just having something just come out of this portal every episode? That just seems just like every other supernatural show would not have that just weird goofy portal thing. But we're doing that here. Why? It just doesn't make sense to me. But again, they set up this whole portal thing and they have to make just a lot of usage out of it. They just have to make it so coincidentally that what they're talking about ends up having this ghost come out of this portal. And sometimes the portal thing is random, and then other times, like, it's like, oh, okay, all right. So, but again, why aren't ghosts just like continuously popping out of this thing like nobody's business all the time? But anyways, so Maddie and Jack, they're planning on surprising Jazz with again another one of these gadgets. And so Jack is to have this ghost extractor, and it looks like a vacuum. And I'm like, so how is this going to come into the play of this episode? And really, it doesn't really have much shelf life, besides it just going on and just being this goofy gag where like a normal vacuum can go on and probably rip your hair out or suck too much of your hair into the vacuum. Like, they go on and kind of do that trope with this gadget, and that's all the life that this really has. And even Jack, he ends up losing a good just chunk of his hair. I'm like, so is Jack just wearing a toupee for the rest of the show then? Are we ever gonna come back to this in the episode? No? Okay, well, it's just the classic, like, uh, like second bit where they go to it and then you're forced to forget it later. So Now back at the cafeteria. So we go on to uh, have both Tucker and both Danny thinking to Sam, it's like, you know what, isn't this a little bit much? Like, this is kind of extreme for us to be going from like the normal, like day to day, like meatloaf and pizza and whatever, to now just eating like a thing of just turf and bread. Like, come on, give us some kind of like, give us a salad or some kind of like uh just kind of middle ground where we can like pretend that it's good food instead of just like having us eat a brick uh, from eating lasagna the other day or something like that. So we all of a sudden have what I would assume would be this principal coming in. They just call him Mr. Lancer, so I'm assuming that he's just a principal. I'd have to assess that. So plus, he's the guy that's kind of going on and giving people detention, and kind of reminds me of the principal from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. So, principal, I guess. So we have the principal that's going on and applauding Sam for her giving the kids this alternative, and this seems to be a very welcome experiment. And so, come to find out, Tucker is taking a big whiff, and he's like, you know what? Like, something sounds familiar, or something smells familiar, and it seems that there is meat somewhere. And come to find out, in the faculty lounge, there is supposed to be this whole like Thanksgiving meal that all the teachers are going on and eating. And so it's like, okay, so like the teachers lounge has the meat, but like all the kids are just going to suffer through a a tofurkey burger or some crap like that. They're just going to suffer through that. So we go on and have the lunch lady that isn't a ghost. She's going on and she's going on her break. So she's whipping out this burger and she's eating it. It's like, yeah, I'm not going to eat all this stuff that all these kids are eating. I just have this pre-made burger. And so all of a sudden we have this lunch lady ghost that appears. And Danny all of a sudden goes like, huh? And then blue smoke comes from out of his mouth. But he ends up getting distracted by this bully named Dash. So I'm like, so Spider-Man has like Flash Thompson. This is basically Flash Thompson, aka Dash, and we're kind of playing on this. I'm like, okay, like so somebody's probably been reading a lot of comic books and just checked a lot of stuff together. But again, this is the fun of it. It's this could be really insulting to Butch in some ways, and I really want to apologize. But like I have to go on and compare everything and be honest about everything. I can't just go on and ignore like, well, this is obviously like a Flash Thompson ripoff. Because it really is. You even have the blonde hair and everything. Uh, but anyways, so Dash ends up chucking this meat pie behind Danny's ears, and Danny has to realize that he already has the lunch lady ghost problem, but then Flash has to be up all in his grill because Flash was to go on, or Flash, Dash, I'm already confusing the names because I'm thinking of Flash Thompson. Dash is to go on and be like, well, hey, Danny, because of your girlfriend, like, I had to go on and I tried to order 3 mud pies and they literally gave me mud. So Danny's like, well, she's not my girlfriend. So we, of course, get the cliche of Dash grabbing Danny by the shirt and just kind of hucking him up here. And so having Dash turn around and now forcing Danny to chuck all of this mud down his throat. Danny then actually sees the lunch lady ghost off in the distance, so he's like, "Oh, okay, I really need to get this ghost done with, so I need to figure a way out of here." So Danny then yells for a garbage fight, and then all of a sudden everybody springs into action and starts throwing all this mud, and Danny sneaks underneath this table and then goes on and tries to make his way um, to, of course, the back of this cafeteria. Well, of course, Dash is saying like, "I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna pay. You're gonna pay for this one day, Fenton," because the obvious bully nonsense. So Danny, Tucker, and Sam make their way to the back of this cafeteria to then meet up with this lunch lady, and the lunch lady ends up going on and thinking that this is just a normal day of making these meals, and like, well, for lunch today we're having meatloaf, and they're like, well, like, I'm sorry, but like, we're not gonna have meatloaf today. If anything, we've changed the menu. And Tucker's pointing at Sam. It's like, yeah, she changed the menu, and this is like the whole like Gozer, like, are you a god? And you say no. And so since Tucker said that Sam was the one who changed the menu, the ghost ends up focusing on Sam and wants to try and kidnap her and hurt her because she changed the menu. And so the lunch lady ghost says that the menu has been the same for 50 years. And it's like, well, Danny's like, well, it's changed today. And so he's like, speaking of change, I'm about to go ghost. So Danny ends up turning into the Phantom, and the first thing he does is try to reason with the ghost because this is pilot episode. So Danny just turns to the lunch lady. It's like, I command you to go away. And I'm thinking in my mind, I'm like, yeah, that would be like the cliche thing to have anyone go on and say in their first ever ghost hunting experience, to just be like, yeah, ghost, like, can't you just leave? Like, rationally, that's to be met by the ghost taking all of this plates and silverware and chucking them at Danny. And so Danny goes from his phantom form to then having uh like his see-through form, where everything just like goes right through him and he doesn't get hurt. So I'm like, what's the difference between his see-through form and his phantom? I'm like, but it's all to just tell us that, like, whenever you see him, like, and he completely blends into the environment, that he's gonna go on and like just have things float through him and he's not going to be hurt. So that makes a lot of sense. So Danny turns his legs into a snake, and he is going on, and he is trying to collect all these plates that go flying at both Tucker and Sam, but more plates are just continuing to come. So Danny goes on and is mentioning about how he wants to have a career as being a busboy, and I thought that was kind of funny. So, because he's doing so much in this kitchen, and then all of a sudden we start to get these ovens that start to turn monsterish, and I'm like, okay, here's what really looks like the an episode of, like, the real Ghostbusters, where like the Ghostbusters team goes into this environment, and all of a sudden we have these vacuums and all these antique mechanical objects all just starting to like turn into these monstrous things and blah blah. And I'm like, all right, just classic real Ghostbusters moments here. but the lunch lady's still going on and being a presence, but then also these items are being possessed. So Danny just takes his friends and phases through the walls, and that's how they escape. And all of a sudden, bizarrely, the light fixture in the room starts to explode, and then the ghost lady is to start to have all these items, these books and pencils and random baseballs and all this crap, just start to tornado around her, and then all of a sudden we then get from, I'm assuming, uh the teacher's lounge, all the meat coming from there to now stacking on this woman's face. And we have Tucker who's like, well, hey, where did all that meat come from? Like, he's like, Lancer, the principal. And then we find that at the teacher's lounge, Lancer is like taking the sheet and realizing like, oh, Paradise Lost, whatever that frickin' means. That sounds like a show to me. What does Paradise Lost mean? What? That seemed weird. But then there's like a bone there. So we then have this meat monster that yeah, it still has the lunch lady inside of it, but it's so like this meat monster now, very Clayface-ish. So I love the fact that this lunch lady at some point randomly stops and it's like, "Whoa, would you like a cookie? Or would you like some fish? Would you yeah, hilarious." Just goes into this bit of just dialogue, monologue, and then all of a sudden just stops and it's like, "Would you like a cookie?" And I'm like, "Oh my god, this is hilarious." So it kind of reminds me of the Ninja Sex Party song, "Cookies," because it's freaking like they all of a sudden like go into this like deep demonic like cookies, yeah. It's hilarious. If you've never checked that song out, you need to. So we have this whole thing going on, an exchange of like expiration dates, and Danny's like, well, the only expiration date here is you. And so coincidentally, Danny goes from being a phantom to then being Danny, and he's like, yipes. And so all of a sudden the meat monster grabs Danny, and we're like, okay, well, I guess obviously he's done for. And the meat monster chucks Danny into Tucker and then grabs Sam, and they're like, oh my god, we have to go on, we have to get Sam now. And all of a sudden Lancer comes in and is like, hold on, boys. And then we have Dash that comes in and like, I told you you're gonna pay her a bully. So now all of a sudden Tucker and Danny are in detention for what, I don't know why. But Lancer is going on and going through their resume of stuff that they've gone on and done in the past. And we also have Dash that's there. It's like, yeah, like you guys are gonna get your comeuppance. So the charges are obvious that they had gone on and they conspired to destroy the cafeteria, and it was all about the whole food fight thing, and that's how they got in trouble. And so because Dash is to be this football guy that can go on and have nothing ever hurt him because he's football guy, and so I'm sure he gets straight A's, but he never studies a day in his life, and and this and that because they have to go on and award this guy for just being a jock. That's a stereotypical jock nonsense for you. Uh, but since the whole food fight incident, uh, like since they couldn't touch Dash, they had to figure out a way to punish somebody. It had to be the two of them. So so Lancer is to go on and leave here, and so Dash is supposed to watch things and supposed to watch the door, and so Danny turns to Tucker. It's like, well, hey, we need to go on. We need to help Sam here, so we need to leave. So they go on and they look at this camera footage, and because they're in the part of the school that has this bit of camera footage, and they find out that there is some like water leaking going on by these beef and pork boxes, and they're like, okay, we need to go down there because that has to be the track of ectoplasm that is to lead us to Sam. So the two of them leave. Lancer and Dash get back into the room, and they're like, hey, like because Lancer is like, well, hey, you guys, is punishment, and then he realizes that they're not in the room. It's like, well, will be worse than you can ever imagine. And so he's going on and claiming something where no one's really there, but he just has to be the maniacal muhaha villain. So yeah, so Tucker is going on in the room full of meat, and he's like, "Oh my god, my dreams have been answered," and so it's kind of funny here how Danny says to Tucker how it's like, "How is it that I have the ghost powers, but you're more weird than I am?" And so we now find that Sam is in this seemingly cluster of meat here. Just she is in the middle of this just meat, just conglomerate of pile, and it seems that she is having a struggling of getting out of it. It's like quicksand to her, a meat quicksand of some sort that she is just stuck there and she cannot get out of it. It seems so. We go on to have this lunch lady ghost that is telling Sam, my dear child, meat is good for kids. And it helps them grow. It makes them smile. Whereas Sam is uh, no, we don't need meat. It's like, we've grown up to realize that we don't need that. And so here is where the lunch lady starts to get furious, and she's like, silence! You need discipline, manners, respect, and chicken or fish. Chicken or fish. So Danny and Tucker turn to one another. It's like, okay, hey, you take care of Sam and you try to rescue her, and I'm gonna go on and I'm gonna of course go after the ghost because that's what I do. And Tucker ends up having this fork and knife. He's like, well ahead of you. I'm prepared to eat my way to get to Sam. So Danny goes on and is taking on this ghost, and he obviously takes her down while Tucker is taking down some slab of steak, and it's like, all right, like, uh, he's like, I'll have you out of no time here, Sam. So Danny goes on and he tries to, of course, kick the lunch lady because that's obviously what he does. He punches, he kicks, he tackles, even dragons. He's just tackling and smacking and slapping just dragons around like nobody's business. And like when eventually he just realizes that like that's not always going to work, like he still just tries it anyways. But so all of a sudden, uh, the nurse is going on, and or the nurse, the lunch lady is going on and telling Danny, it's like, well, this is why you need meat, because so all of a sudden we have these shish kebabs coming out of this box, and they're flying, and so now Danny is like turning into like Mr. Fantastic, and like his body is like separating, and half of his body is also turning into like ghost form, and all these shish kebabs are falling through this wall. So here's again where the lunch lady turns into the meat monster, even so much so that now Sam is technically free from this trap. So I'm like, what was the point of just Tucker trying to just chomp his way through all that meat? Because Sam is just going to get free anyway, so it's kind of a waste of time. So, but it's kind of just funny anyways. So Danny is realizing, oh my god, I'm up against this meat monster again. And Tucker is like, help us on the way, buddy. So the meat monster grabs Danny, and we have, I think the meat monster ends up throwing Danny, and we then come to find that both Sam and Tucker are like, oh, so they run off, and so the meat monster takes its hand and has it go flying after them, and so Danny goes on to end up in this wall, and he grabs both Sam and Danny as they're running off away from this meat monster, and he pulls them through this wall, and he goes on to just kind of to rescue them, and the two of them are looking at Danny. It's like, you know what, like, you have been going on really just getting clocked by this ghost thing. Like, why is it that you don't get tired? Why is it that you don't get exhausted? And since, of course, Danny is new to all this like superhero stuff, like he actually does get tired and he does get exhausted and he just drops like a rock here. And so they're like, okay, I guess we go him on home then. So back at the Fenton works, we have Jazz that is going on and coming home, and all of a sudden, both Maddie and Jack are using that vacuum device that they had, of course, talked about earlier. And so Jazz's hair ends up getting sucked up into this machine. And so Jazz is now just like traumatized by her parents going on and trying to hurt her with this vacuum equipment, and like sneaking up on her in the smoke and the dark and the whatever. And so she's like, well, I'll have this in my memoir. So Sam and Tucker bring in Danny to say that it's like, well, hey, yeah, we found out that like poor Danny in school, he was just nodding off. So we're gonna bring him on home and put him in bed. And the parents just think nothing wiser about this. And they bring up that it's like, oh no, no, no. Like Danny, like really he isn't doing anything out of the normal, but still like Jazz is. Just like, okay, all right, I love this. So Danny eventually goes on to wake up in bed, And bizarrely, both Sam and Tucker have been there the whole entire time, watching over Danny for reasons I don't quite understand. And but Tucker ends making the joke to Danny. It's like, well, yeah, you've been asleep for 4 days, and Danny's like, 4 days, and Tucker's like, no, 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 you've only been like sleeping for a couple of hours. He's like, oh, okay, thank God. So Sam goes on and states that Tucker is the reasoning uh, for Danny being the way that he has been put into this trouble situation. And Tucker turns it back over to Sam. It's like, well, hey, like, if you weren't to have gone on and changed the menu like you did, like, we wouldn't have been in this situation either. So, so Tucker is saying, like, well, yeah, we need to go back to the old menu, and that'll solve all our problems. And Sam is like, well, over my dead body, you're going to go on and do that. So, Danny goes on and he makes his way back to school. And all of a sudden, there's two different protests going on. There's Sam, who of course wants to go on and have her vegetarian uh, protest, like, yeah, veggies, ooh yeah. And then we go on and we have Tucker, uh, who wants to have his meat and eat it too. And we have a bunch of these can girls that are swinging their legs and dancing around. And so we have Danny turning to Tucker and Sam and being like, how is it you guys had so much time to just concoct all this nonsense? And Sam ends up having this joke about how, like, since she didn't have to, she, since she's a vegan and she doesn't have to cook her meal, um, that she had all the more time to be able to concoct this whole protest thing, where as Tucker's to go on and say, it's like, well, yeah, because we're in high in protein because we have these meat meals. Like, that's what gave us the energy to put this whole thing together. So we again have Danny that's to have to choose between these two sides here. And luckily, it ends up getting interrupted by his ghostly smoke that comes out of his mouth. And we then have this huge truck of that just says the word meat on it and has a steak on it. And this meat truck has combusted and is having all this meat going flying. And again, we have this meat monster. It's lunchtime. So Danny turns to both Sam and Tucker while all these commotions and all these people are running around. And Danny tells his friends that they have to go on and they have to have a hug. So Danny can change into this ghost without anyone knowing. So he turns to his friends and telling them they need to hug and make up. So they do, and then so Danny turns into the Phantom. So now we're back with Jazz, who's trying to do this psychological breakthrough with some guy named Spike, and she all of a sudden gets grabbed by this tethering uh, ectoplasmic net of some kind, and they end up calling it the Fenton Grappler. And Maddie then finally turns to Jack and's like, you know what, like, you would have thought that, like, the ghost would have tried to escape or something, but it seems like it's not doing that with Jazz. And we finally have Jazz is like, well, that's because I'm not a freaking ghost. It's like, you ambush me, you suffocate me with smoke, uh, while I was trying to go through and have this breakthrough with Spike, this random person that we'll probably never see again. And so Jack just tosses the thermos in front of Jazz and nothing happens. And he's like, yeah, this thing still doesn't work. So back with Phantom and the meat monster. So we now have to understand how Danny gets to get the thermos to bust this ghost. Or in this case, the meat monster. So Danny's facing off against this meat monster as it's kind of batting him away. And so Danny goes on and does this kick, and again, the ghost bats him away. And so Danny has this kick, and then it like kicks the monster, and then so Tucker is looking and like, man, he's actually getting way better at what he's doing. And then all of a sudden this punch comes in, and it punches him so hard he goes into this plane, grabs this thing of water, and throws it on his face, and then goes back diving into the fight here. And so Jack, when noticing that this thermos isn't working, he realizes that he wants to go on and throw the towel in on Ghost investigating. And when he goes on and actually turns his back, there's a huge explosion going off in the distance that, of course, is to be dealing with the meat monster. And Danny thrusting his way through the meat monster to have this big hole in the ground. So as again, Jack is going on doing this whole vow thing that he forever will turn his back on ghosts, we then all of a sudden go on to have Danny that is to thrust his way through this meat monster and making a good bit of damage to now have the lunch lady go on and face off against Danny, be like, oh, what a mess. And is to go on and have all these meat minions that are to go on and face off against Danny. And so Danny goes on and slices into them, and they just reform. And he's like, "Oh man, like this is to be a little bit harder than I expected." So, and then all of a sudden he turns back into Danny, and then the meat minions all grab him and are kind of carrying him off. So while Danny's getting carried off, Danny is so close to his father that he grabs the thermos away from him. He's like, aha, like this is my chance. So, holy crap, we're only an hour and 20 minutes in this, and we still haven't gotten through the last episode. So, as Jack is to go on and finally, like, see Danny Phantom as a ghost and now put it together that Danny is to be this ghost and just sees a ghost kid, he's like, wait a minute, like I was right all along. There are ghosts. They do exist. And so he got on into this whole slew of vowing and saying that he never was going to go on and do ghostly things again, but he turned his back on that. Like he turned his back on believing that ghosts don't exist. So Danny comes back in to open up this thermos and have this blast of what I'm assuming is some kind of proton electric thing of things to then net this ghost to then have it be sucked into this thermos, and Danny then turns back into regular Danny again. So we go on to then have Jack that has his Fenton finder, and he's starting to use it, and the voice is talking to him, telling him where exactly to go. And Danny ends up telling Jack, it's like, well, yeah, like there was a ghost here and it ran off. So Jack is like, oh man, we have a runner. So they just continue going on the path of trying to figure out where the ghost is. So Danny is to finally confess to his friends that he finally thinks that he knows what he can do with these powers, at least, and that'll be the non-stopping thing that goes through episode to episode. So Lancer ends up turning to Danny. It's like, well, hey, you're in a world of trouble. So we now go on and see the kids are going on and picking up meat, as um, also Tucker is to pick up a turf witch, and so by the end of all this, we have Dash who's kind of laughing at both Danny and everyone else, and like, ha ha ha, you have to pick up this meat. And so Danny decides he's gonna touch the trash and have all this meat just fall onto Dash here, and Dash then turns to Danny. It's like, well, hey, Fenton, a little help? It's like, yeah, right. Whatever you say, Dash. And then we just end the episode. So at the Fenton Works in episode 2. So Jack is going on and he's having what looks like a a fishing outing in front of this ghost portal, this Fenton portal, and he has this fishing line, and it's supposed to be this unbreakable uh, ecto or ghost line, and it's supposed to be the Fenton ghost fisher, and or it's coated with special high test uh, line that can't be broken. So as he's going on and he's thrusting this line out into this portal, hoping that a ghost is going to come out of this, Jack all of a sudden realizes that he had taken too much soda in, so he's going to leave this line to his son and then treadle off to the turlet, which I think he ends up calling the Fenton urinal for whatever goofy reason, because I guess he has to just slap his name in front of everything. So Danny all of a sudden notices his breath is becoming blue, as there is to all of a sudden be a ghost that comes out of this portal, but it's not something that would so easily just make sense for a fishing line to have captured this ghost, because a dragon ends up coming out of this portal. So I'm like, okay, how is it this line grabbed this ghost? But again, just misbelief here. So this dragon with this gold necklace comes out, or this gold amulet ends up coming out of this portal. And the dragon ghost is to go on and tell Danny, I want to go! I have to go! And so Danny turns to the dragon. It's like, well, you're gonna have to wait in line because my dad has already gone to the urinal. So Danny is like, of course, he's like, I'm gonna go ghost, and then he turns into the ghost, and so we have Danny that fights against this dragon, and while fighting it, he ends up kicking off this amulet, and the amulet goes flying, and this amulet goes inside Danny's satchel, and all of a sudden, this then dragon turns into this princess, and her name is Princess Dorothea, Dora Yeah. I think that's her name. So I'm just gonna call her Princess Dorothea because I probably will remember that name. So if you know the princess, you know what I'm talking about. So uh, so we have this princess that goes on and tells Danny that she wanted to go to this costume ball, but her mother wouldn't let her. So because she became angry, she then turned to this dragon. So for some goofy reason, this princess or this dragon at some point had died, probably in medieval times somewhere. And I guess they had never broken the curse. Or maybe this princess had turned into a ghost because her being a dragon? Uh, I'm thinking way too much about this show. So we go on to have Danny take care of the princess, and like he doesn't go. I don't think he goes on and thermoses her. I think she ends up just going back into the portal or something like. I'm not quite sure exactly what happens. Um, but like, because we end up seeing the princess later on in the episode, so he doesn't suck her back into anything. We see her obviously by the tail end of this episode, and Danny goes on and says like, well, hey, if that dragon suit is a costume, then man, like, uh, so the dragon lady leaves, and then Jack reappears, and now we are back at Casper High. Come to find out that there is a big dance going on. So there was a costume dance going on. Now there's just bizarrely this big dance that's going on. So Tucker is going on and try to ask out every single girl that exists in the school out, and every single one of them are saying no. So Danny turns to Tucker. It's like, well, hey, I guess that's strike three, right? And Tucker's like, no, actually, it's 3,000. So Sam is talking about how she's going on and saying that no one really wants to go to this stupid dance because, of course, she's this cliche-ish character that even though she doesn't want to go to the dance, she has a dress just lined up in case anybody's to go on and actually ask her, but she doesn't want to go because like she hates her tradition of it all and blah blah blah. It's that kind of character. But you know, if she would be getting asked, she'd be like, "Heck yeah, I'll go," because that's really the cliche of certain people that are just be like, "Oh man, I would never want to go to a thing like that," but like because she has to be just pro against everything if everyone else is just pining away hoping that they would go to a dance. So we all of a sudden go on to have this random character that's supposed to be the hot girl come to the fray here and just be like burnt cheap burnt da, da, da. If you guys remember Fast Times at Richmond High, you probably don't because you're watching this. But yeah, there's the whole scene where the girl is like coming in, she has the red swimsuit, and she's like, "Oh yeah." And then that scene also combines with the guy doing something in the bathroom. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it. So I wouldn't recommend that scene. Not recommend like whatever. Anyways, so Pauline ends up coming to the fray, and Sam is like, "Well, if I had a dime for every time that I saw the," and like the guys are like, "Well, how much money do you have?" And Sam's like, "I didn't mean that literally." So they're going on and they're going and they're looking at Paulina and just saying how like amazingly good looking and awesome and ooh wow she is. And so I guess since we immediately have to say that Tucker like is gonna strike out with this woman, that maybe Danny should go on and ask this girl out so he can have a date to the dance. So Danny's like, no, I don't think I'll have a shot with this girl because I have weak knees. And so Sam is like, well, how about you get those weak knees some exercise? And so Danny makes his way to Paulina, and immediately while he kind of puts his hand on the tree, he like phases and smacks in the tree and falls. And so Paulina's like, well, hey, have you fallen for me? Are you gonna use that stupid cliche-ish line? And so we all of a sudden have Danny who's like, oh, that line? No, 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 no. So Danny all of a sudden has his pants phase and they drop trowel. And now everybody can go on and look at Danny's underwear and just have a good chuckle and laugh and what have you. And Paulina's like, well, nobody has ever used the drop trowel stance before, but I have to admire creativity. Like, points for you, Gryffindor. And so Sam is going on like, wow, like man, you have broken some kind of speed record of just going on and just ruining uh, and just uh, and so Sam turns around and ends up calling uh, Paulina here shallow, and because of that comment, Paulina's like, oh well, like you just called me shallow. Well, like here's what I'm gonna do now. So because of this girl just being called out for being shallow, Paulina makes it her like life's mission to then date Danny to get under Sam's skin. And really it does nothing for the whole entire episode, but just have Danny with a date. And like also like Paulina is to think that like, well, like Sam like probably has a thing for Danny, but she won't admit it. And maybe that's hoping to just kind of get, but like it never really like comes to fruition of any of that really happening, where Sam is to probably admit that maybe she does have some kind of thing for Danny, hence why they end up by the end of the episode dancing together. But it's really just here nor there in this situation. So we have Tucker and Danny by the locker room, or by the lockers. And Tucker is to say, it's like, well, hey, now that I've seen you go on and try to ask out a girl, like, I guess my strategy is to just have clean boxers the next time that I try to ask out a girl, because that would be a good way to get to a woman's heart. So Danny's like, well, yeah, I'm never gonna have some kind of strategy to get with Paulina ever again. Like that was my one shot, and I burnt that bridge. And then all of a sudden, Paulina ends up appearing. It's like, oh, you who Danny? And like Danny's like, oh, what? Hey man, good luck. Maybe like she'd completely gotten amnesia and completely forgot that you were even like going on and gonna like you might as well just do whatever. Take your shot. So all of a sudden, as Danny is like, oh my god, here's my chance, bam, he gets shut into a locker by Dash. And then Dash is like, hey, like, so here is where Danny phases out of the locker and then realizes that he can possess people. So, because Danny phases out of the locker and then he goes right into Dash's body. He's like, "Oh, I'm Dash now," and all of a sudden, Dash is a talk about how he is the president of Casper High, and he's the president of the Geek Club, and he has all these toenails, and he rubs his mother's feet, and he'll definitely go on and rub Paulina's feet, and that creeps this girl out, and she runs away, and so, or no wait, that no wait, that creeps Paulina out, and so that has Danny phase out of Dash, and Dash is like, why do I want to just rub my mother's feet now? So Paulina comes back and is talking to Danny because they bump into one another, and it's like, we have to stop meeting like this, and all of a sudden Paulina notices the necklace that Danny has. And Paulina's like, "Oh, what's this?" And Danny is like, "Oh, well, I was going to give that to you if you wanted to go on and go out with me." So Paulina's like, "Oh my God, wow, this is all right. I'll just put this on." So the necklace is obviously glowing in a weird way, as well as also Danny's pants is glowing in a weird way. It's starting to phase out again. But so this guy needs some different kind of pants. Maybe it's the polyester of the, I don't know. Maybe it's the fabric of the pants that are just doing him in here. Also, it kind of reminds me of the Reaper episode where the main character would go on and just build up a lot of static electricity and he'd start to get shocked consistently. Kind of reminded me of that. So Danny lets Paulina away with the amulet, but then he realizes, like, wait a minute, like, this amulet technically doesn't belong to me. Maybe it's my sister's or my mother's or my whatever, but oh well, like, I'll worry about that later because she said yes. But so, like, Danny doesn't even remember him fighting this dragon and knocking the amulet off from this ghost lady. He doesn't remember any of that. He just remembers that it could be something that he just had in his backpack and it could be from anywhere. So all of a sudden, Danny's pants is down by his ankles yet again. And so Lancer is to come in here and is have this weird uh, hip book for the unhip. And throughout all this stuff, he's going on and slangingly talking here. The thing that is really to get out of this is that Lancer is kind of upset that Danny is consistently dropping trowel and that he wants his parents to see him, Lancer, so that way they can discuss Danny's problems because Danny's getting in a lot of trouble lately. So, but then also Lancer is to hand Danny, luckily, this belt and to be like, "Hey, man, like this is gonna be a thing to keep yourself out of trouble with the man." So Danny now has to go on and explain to his father that he needs to go to this parent-teacher conference. So Danny is going on to realizing that his father is back by the portal trying to catch a ghost, and Jack can't catch a cold. So, at first, Danny is to go on and want to explain to his father that he's like, well, hey, like, I need to have you go on and I need you to go to this parent teacher conference. But because Jack can't go on and catch any ghosts with this fishing line, he's so upset. He's like, man, if anybody comes in here with bad news, I'm going to go on and rip their head off. And he looks at Danny. It's like, you better not go on and give me any kind of bad news. I'm like, yeah, like this is hilarious. This is good. So we then have Danny that's like, well, like, Mr. Lance, and then he just goes into his father. It's like, I'll just be my dad and go to this whole meeting. So when Danny is now his father, the whole entire time Danny is Jack. Danny is saying just grown up stuff that he shaves and he this and he that's because he's supposed to be an adult now, and I just find that to be funny throughout this whole thing. So Lancer is smiling at Jack, thanking him for coming here. And so and Jack is like, well, yeah, I'm a parent, and that's me. And so Lancer is to mention to Jack about a number of incidences that have recently acquired to happen with Danny, and Jack is to go on like, well, hey, did his pants fall down again? Because it's like, well, my kid, he goes on and he studies so hard that he forgets to eat sometimes, and like that's the reason why his pants keep falling down. I'm like, that's actually a smart idea of like creating a way to just kind of get out of this. That it's like, um, well, yeah, like my kid's too skinny, and like that's why his pants keep falling down because we just can't get him uh the right pants that fit him. Sorry. We don't have the budget to afford a belt. But so and then also like Jack goes on, or Danny as Jack says to Lancer, it's like, well, yeah, like uh coming to find out, like Danny thinks that you're his favorite teacher, and Lancer's like, oh, all right. So and Danny as Jack is saying like, well, yeah, and we think that teachers are underpaid and underappreciated, and Lance is like, oh my god, like I like your style, Mr. Fenton. Like, how about you go on and how about you be a chaperone at the dance? And so now we have the Amityville Park Mall, and Danny and his friends are eating at the food court. The time to grub. So time to grub food court. So now we have Danny that's technically in hot water here because he's now forced his dad to be a chaperone at this dance that he had no real knowledge of. And also, um, like Tucker is saying to Danny that it's like, well, hey man, like I still haven't had a date yet. What if you just phase into people and and uh and I ask them to date me and you say yes, and like and Danny's like, I'm not gonna do that like that. I'm not gonna use my powers like that. So it's like I'm not gonna give you that chance to go to the dance. So we all of a sudden have Penelope that's making her way into a shopping place called Abyss. And there's supposed to be some fleece tea sale. And immediately when you have a clearance or like an item that is probably going to be like the thing that's going to be like the to go item, like for Black Fridays, it's like the low quantity item. Immediately, you should not assume to go into the store and they have the perfect size for you of that piece of clothing. And maybe this person had gone on to be in a retail job at some point and kind of knows the hustle and bustle of retail crap, where you got to go into a store And well, if you've even shopped before, like you'll kind of know about this. But anyways, so you're going for a specific shirt or specific item. You're saying like, well, hey, do you have this small fleece? And they're like, well, of course, this exact item that has this exact name, like like this definitely won't have been anywhere but on this shelf because it's getting discontinued. And like really using some retail jargon here, which I really appreciate, even though I also just kind of hate retail. I really do. Uh, uh, not the people that are forced to work there, but the idea of it, just the real idea of it, just the real just like because I've worked there and it's miserable. You're supposed to pretend to be happy when it's an environment that does not create happiness whatsoever. Uh, except for if you're a customer there, because you're supposed to get your way, even though really you're not really getting your way either. Because logically, people are like, "Well, I'm not just going to give you this discount on this item just because you show up." Uh, I'm going too far into this. Let's so Penelope ends up getting upset because she can't find the shirt in her exact size. How about you just go up a size? Is that the worst thing in the world? So Penelope starts to lose control and starts to become this big, huge rage monster dragon. And so the dragon is like, want fleecy tea. And so she bursts the uh the display of these t-shirts, this table that is to be lying these shirts upon, and she roasts that. And so now we of course go on and have Danny that's by the food court, and he has blue smoke coming from out of his mouth. So they're like, all right, we have to track down where the ghost is. So Danny turns into Phantom and he faces off against this dragon. So Danny looks at the dragons like, have we met somewhere? Haven't I beaten you before? So we have the dragon ghost that blasts its flame. Green flame. It makes no sense. And Danny ends up dodging it, and it's like, all right, like let's try this all back again. Like, my name is Danny Phantom, and your name is so we again have uh we again have Danny that's being attacked by uh the dragon ghost scenes getting whipped by the tail, and so Danny ends up thrusting himself barreling bullet style into the dragon's chest. And we then in return have the dragon kind of um kind of forcing itself on top of Danny and holding him down. And now yelling, must have tea. And Danny's like, well, yeah, like I can see how you can want tea because coffee can make you a little bit jittery. And so Danny phases out from the ground, and the dragon's like, well, hey, where is this phantom? And so Danny ends up appearing of like, well, how about some punch? And then he punches him in the face. And so as Danny ends to face off against this dragon, again, the necklace ends up going flying, and this turns the dragon back into Paulina, and the necklace ends up in this abyss bag where this woman is running off out of fear. And so Paulina goes to this abyss bag where no one else is to be by, and she coincidentally finds that her shirt is to be there with the right size. And it's like, well, I guess I had shopped there and found the right shirt after all. And so Paulina is fine again, and then she realizes that she can put back on the necklace. So Danny Phantom turns back into Danny, and so Danny's like, okay, like we need to investigate. We need to figure out what's going on. Like, how is it that uh, this princess character and this like, how is it that this dragon keeps showing up? We need to do some kind of figuring out here. So Tucker still wants to go on and figure out how he can go to the dance. And all of a sudden, there seems to be only one girl left to ask out of the whole entire school, and it's to be this girl named Valerie. And Valerie is like, you know what, I've already gone on and I've already found someone that I'm going with the dance with. And if that person doesn't work out, then you would be my only option. So all of a sudden, Valerie turns to a guy named Quan, and Quan is to say, like, dude, I'm dumping you. Like, I found this other chick. And then Valerie's like, well, okay, Tucker, like, you have a date. So here's the goofy thing here. So Tucker makes the date with the Valerie, and we completely forget about Valerie even existing. But then Danny then turns to Tucker at one point and is to say to Tucker that he needs to go on and ask out Sam to the dance because Danny is to be a nice guy and knows that Sam wanted to go to the dance, but no one would ask her. So why didn't just Danny either one ask out Sam himself to just be a good friend, or two, just tell Danny that, or to have Danny just tell Tucker, it's like, well, hey man, like, why do you need this Valerie girl that obviously doesn't really want to be with you going to this dance? How about just ask Sam? Because she's right here. And I know she doesn't really want to go to the dance, but ask her out anyways. And that would have eliminated Valerie even being an existing thing here. But moving on, back to the Fontaine, the Fenton Works. Some of these names, I tell you. So, uh, Maddie and Jack are going on, and they're talking about how this is Danny's first ever dance, and to make sure to not embarrass him. And then Jazz is there, and it's like, well, yeah, like, so Jazz is going on and telling Danny that, like, well, yeah, like, you hopefully need to go on and not let your girlfriend know that your parents are sick with an obsession of ghosts, and you can't go on and tell them any little secrets because if anything, if you marry this girl and everything works out, like, that's called entrapment. Well, when Paulina will find out about it later. So, as well as also Jazz ends up going on and busting um, Danny's chops because she is to come to the conclusion about Danny, about his clumsiness and his nervousness, and in saying that he is having a girlfriend. And Danny has been interjecting, like, well, I'm not a ghost. And so Jack is going on and saying that since now Danny has a girlfriend, going to this dance is like, oh yeah, this is the perfect opportunity for me to talk to someone else about ghosts. And so we have Danny that makes this plan with both Sam and Tucker that uh that Danny's gonna go on and take this ghost uh ghost fishing liner thing, and Danny is to tell ugh, is to tell Sam to do some research on this dragon thing. So she does kind of become the bookworm character, and that Tucker ends. I messed this up a little bit. And then Tucker ends up having to need to go on and ask Sam to the dance. So because Sam and Tucker need to do two things at the dance to help Danny. So we have Danny that phases into Tucker and then goes to Sam's place and asks her out. And all of a sudden, Sam ends up coming out with this amazing dress, and then they go out to the dance. So Danny then goes to Paulina's place, and Paulina's father is there, and this is some hilariousness. So the dad is going on and saying like, "Well, hey, if you upset her, like we're gonna have a violent talk," and Paulina's like, "Hey, Dad, don't scare him," and this and that, and so the dad turns to Danny. He's like, "I know where you live." So they go to the Casper High dance, and the principal is going on and throwing out all these slang to all these people, and both Danny and Paulina are having this punch, and all of a sudden Paulina is to go on and have this green tongue out, and it's very weird. And so uh because Danny is going on and needing to explain to Paulina that he needs the necklace back. Because it wasn't his, it's actually Sam's. And Paulina's like, oh? So really putting together this whole lie. And then Danny's like, well, hey, I need to get this necklace from you so I can give you something better. And so we all of a sudden have Danny getting forcibly interrupted by needing to go into his father so that way Jack, possessed as Danny, can talk to Lancer. And we're going to come to find out that Danny is going to need that to be done throughout this entire thing. So Danny is not only trying to face off against this dragon uh, ghost thing, but then he's also needing to possess his father to consistently put together this whole ruse. So Jack, it seems at first, is fairly rude to Lancer, but then he ends up saying it's like, oh yeah, I just got confused with all this lighting that I thought Lancer was George Clooney. So Jack tries to go on and tries to leave, and he tries to get some punch, and he goes on and says that he shaves every day because he's an adult, and so Jack then goes on to meet up with Tucker, and Sam and is to give them these walkies and like tell them, okay, hey, like if you see Lancer, my father, in the same room together, then let me know. Also, Sam, like you need to go on and kind of let me know about the dragon. We need to kind of figure that out. So, because Sam is to tell Paulina that, or Sam is to go on and need to watch over Paulina because it's like, well, hey, whatever you do, don't make her angry. And that's the one person that's to easily make her angry. So Paulina and Sam meet at the bathroom, and so the two of them are talking, and so Paulina is mentioning about the necklace and the amulet, and so Sam goes into a whole rant about this necklace isn't actually hers; it's actually her grandmother's, and so so Paulina's going on and saying like, well, like since this is yours, I'm not giving up this amulet so easily. And so Paulina thinks that Sam is to be Danny's girlfriend, and Sam is like, no, we're just best friends. And also, Sam ends up telling Paulina that she didn't mean to call her shallow. So eventually, Paulina's like, you know what? Like, I only agreed to do this whole thing if really Danny was going to be Sam's girlfriend, or really there was something there. So now, considering there isn't something there, then Paulina just easily gives the amulet to Sam, and then all of a sudden Sam becomes upset, and because of some condescending thing that Paulina says by the time that she leaves, and Danny then is to sneak into the girls' bathroom to see if Sam and Paulina are okay, to then come to find out that Sam has turned into this dragon. And so the wall of the bathroom is smashed because dragon, and the dragon is to fly off, and so Danny needs to chase off after Sam, who is now a dragon. So Danny turns into Phantom, and so I apologize. I'm getting really wonky about all the dialogue and stuff that's going on here. But I'm also taking 2 hours to talk about an hour long thing. So, my bad. So, Danny chases off against the dragon who is grabbing Paulina by the hand, and Danny figures out a way to bring this dragon down to the ground of this football field for them to square off. So Danny's like, yeah, I don't really know if I want to go on and fight against this dragon because I don't really want to hurt my friend. I don't want to hurt Sam, and if I hurt this dragon, am I hurting Sam? So, but he doesn't even really know if it's Sam or not. But then all of a sudden the dragon says, "Shallow girl," and then he's like, "Well, that's definitely Sam, all right." So Danny goes on to eventually figure out a way to get Paulina out of the dragon's hand, and takes the two of them in phases behind these bleachers, and then Danny finds uh, Dash and this girl, and Dash is trying to put the moves on this girl. Like, well, hey, do you like quarterbacks? Because he had gone on and used that same line on Polina earlier. So Danny gets over the walkie that Lancer is getting close to Danny's father, Jack. And so Danny now scrambles. So because the dragon has pulled the bleachers away, and so Danny needs to go on and grab the tail of this dragon and is trying to fight it off. And so, oh, here's might be the jab about the whole George Clooney thing. Yeah, here's the George Clooney thing. I'm sorry, I think I messed that up a little bit earlier. So Lancer and Jack and Maddie are now meeting up together and they're starting to talk. And Danny phases into Jack and they're like, oh yeah, like I'm sorry I didn't recognize you before. Like you look like George Clooney. And so they go on and start laughing. And so Jack is thrusting Maddie onto the dance floor to try to get away from Lancer. And Maddie is talking about the good old memories that they used to have. And so uh and all of a sudden everybody is seeing both Jack and Maddie cut a rug as Danny leaves to get back to the dragon, and everybody's applauding both Jack and Maddie. And Maddie's like, "Oh yeah, well my name is Jack Fenton." Like, yeah. So Danny faces off against the dragon as the dragon bursts flame out of his mouth, and so Danny ends up Danny ends up saying to the dragon, "It's like, well, yeah, you throw dragon like a girl." Of course, this dragon is a girl. So here's where Danny whips out the Fenton Fisher and is to start to take this fishing line and is to circle it round and round and round and round and round this dragon. And he then pulls off the amulet away from the dragon, and then the dragon ends up coming back into being Sam. So Sam ends up turning to Danny and it's like, well, hey, well, did I get a chance to have fun at this dance? And Danny turns to Sam. It's like, well, yeah, you had a roaring time. Dragon humor here. So Dash tries to put the moves on Polina, and it doesn't really seem that it's quite working. And so here's where Danny turns to Sam and say, like, well, hey, since you technically don't have a date, I don't have a date. How about we just dance together for one last time? And so the two of them go on and dance, and we have Tucker who's like, man, how is it that out of everybody, like I didn't get any dance or I didn't hook up with anyone. And all of a sudden the princess reappears and the princess is like, I want to go to the ball. And Tucker's like, hey guys, wait up. So now we do the final episode, thank God. Uh God, why do these take so long? Good grief. A 2 hour thing, and like the beginning of this was like 20 some odd minutes. How can I go on and how can I speed this up? Uh, Besides not talking about any kind of banter or any, I think probably maybe in the next review I do, maybe these will be shorter. I freaking hope. Good God, only 3 episodes and it took me 2 hours. So at the beginning of this episode, which of course is to be one of a kind, this is to be um, the skull the Skulker, uh, Skulker, Skulker. the Skulker episode. So we're at a warehouse, and Danny is facing off against a box ghost. And the box ghost is this usual throwaway ghost that they have Danny face off against in the beginning here. And Danny's like, hey man, like, I don't have the time for this. I have to study for this exam. And like, I don't really, like, and like, this makes a lot of sense. Like, this guy has other things going on than facing off against this guy that's just throwing these boxes. And Danny assumes that this ghost is just going to be some kind of pushover. So, speaking of pushover, this box ghost is thinking that he's going to push over or fling over some boxes, and he ends up talking about this whole entire address. So, and all these items that are within it. And so they bring in the thermos and they suck out this ghost, and Danny grabs the ghost and throws it into the trap, and then they close the trap. But then all of a sudden, as Tucker is to go on and like juggle or jostle with the thermos, he accidentally drops it, and the thermos accidentally releases all the ghosts that are without of it. And Danny ends up getting really upset with Tucker because it's like, hey man, like, I only had enough time to do all of this ghost hunting because I need to study at some point in some time. And but now all these ghosts end up getting reopened, and now Danny's like, oh, fuck. Now I have to go on and I have to recatch all these ghosts again, and now I'll have no time to study. So we now have the box goes back on the threat yet again, and there all of a sudden is out in the shadows Skulker that is to have his weird, goofy binoculars that have these weird, goofy lines drawn all over them, or drawn inside of them. And he's looking at Danny with these weird, goofy lenses, and he's to look about how unique he is and how about how he's half human, half ghost, one of a kind. So this guy is to go on and say that this is to be a fine addition to his collection, as he has this weird cage with all these other ghosts that are just to be stacked here. So the box ghost all of a sudden appears in front of this cage and is talking, and Skulker is telling the box ghost like, "Hey, you better not touch that cage." So now at the Fenton Works, we go on to come to find out as the family is getting by the breakfast table, because I guess all they eat is breakfast here, that Jazz is to have gone on to enter this Genius magazine and have her mother be a candidate for a woman who's to uh, be a part of this magazine. And it seems that only women are to be able to be people who get in this magazine, bizarrely. So, and come to find out, this woman Connie, I guess it's a joke about Connie Chung, about how Connie Chung is a news reporter, so they called her Connie here. So they end up going on to say that Maddie is going to get interviewed, and so Jack is to talk about like, well, hey, like, is this going to be some kind of swimsuit issue? And so they're going back and forth about this whole swimsuit issue thing, and then Danny is to realize that it's like, wait a minute, if my mother is going to go on and be a part of this swimsuit issue, like, so but here's again where Jack is going after all this nonsense. Is to go on and bring out yet another gadget, and it's to be the Ghost Gabber. So the Ghost Gabber is to supposedly translate what any ghost is to go on and say here. And so when all of a sudden Danny is to go on and start talking here and say the word boo, we all of a sudden have this uh, this machine that cranks out um, I'd better get to school. Fear me. Or I am a ghost. Fear me. And weirdly enough, it seems that every time Danny says something or a ghost says, like, the translator has to say the word fear me. It's weird. So Maddie used to go on and tell her daughter, it's like, well, you know what? It's great that this magazine is going to do something for me. Uh, but if anything, like, I don't really want to get involved in something like this because, like, if your father and I are going to be involved together, then like I don't really want to go on and I don't really want to do it. And Jack kind of chimes in and he's like, well, yeah, because we're a family of geniuses and this and that. So, but they go along with it anyways. They do the interview. So now at this library at Casper High, we come to find out that Danny on this test to get this D, and he has to figure out a way to get some extra credit that Sam brings up. And by doing this extra credit, it's about this weird, goofy, purple-backed gorilla and called Samson. And so they eventually on this computer bring up about this purple-backed gorilla, and they eventually make their way to having Tucker mentions how he has this PDA and that he's going to go on and manage Danny's time uh, per day to day so he can go on and be able to get his studies done, but then also be able to bust Ghost. So we have Danny that goes on and tells Tucker, it's like, well, hey, definitely make sure on this thing that you mentioned that you shouldn't go on and handle the thermos. And Tucker ends up sending it as a reminder. So they make their way to check out the gorilla, and Skullker is to just be kind of lurking around, making his way into the library, realizing that that Danny is going to this zoo to uh, to be able to get to this gorilla. So we all of a sudden have this nerd that appears, and the Skulker ends up blasting with its wrist blasters this net that has this geek kind of stuck to this wall, and he's like, "Well, you thought you could sneak up on me, Skulker, Ghost World's greatest predator." So it's like, all right, so we're kind of setting up here that like this character, yeah, like is basically like the Arnold Predator movie, but he's like Lobo. Like we're trying to figure out what this character is really from in a lot of ways. Um, but as this woman, or as this woman, as this geek, he screams. We have the guy that goes on and Skulker says like, well, hey, like you shouldn't be yelling. You're in a library. So as the Skulker disappears, Dash and his friend are to go on and see this nerd hung up webbed, and they're like, well, hey man, uh I guess I can really appreciate someone else getting bullied. And all of a sudden the web dissolves and the kid falls. So they go to the Amity Parks Zoo, and we find that Sam is having these binoculars off of this tower, and they're watching this gorilla from like a million miles away. So I'm like, how are you like really studying this gorilla whatsoever? So it seems like they've been doing this for hours now, and at some point, both Sam and Tucker are to both get tired, and so as both Tucker and Danny fall into one another's arms, Sam takes a picture of this. So Skulker ends up appearing in this lion's cage and is now going on and looking off from a distance where Sam and Danny and Tucker are in this tower. All of a sudden, this lion ends up getting aggressive and ends up wanting to go on and fight against Skulker. So the purple backed gorilla is to notice that the lion is fighting off against Skulker and is noticing what's going on, as Sam is nearby the cage and is just kind of watching this gorilla and enjoying the gorilla here. So the gorilla is going on and pointing out what is going on in that other cage, as Sam is completely oblivious and is just trying to figure out, like, Lassie, Timmy fall down the well kind of thing going on here, trying to like try to talk to the gorilla and try to go on and figure out what it's saying. And so Sam assumes that the gorilla wants to escape, and so she opens the cage to free him, because that's Sam's ultimate goal is to have this gorilla go back to the wild for how rare this gorilla is. And so Sam frees the gorilla to then have the Skulker net this lion, and is phasing through to then be met by this gorilla that he's fighting with. Skulker has this green slime that goes into the gorilla's eyes, and then uh, Skulker tries to net the gorilla, but then the gorilla grabs the net, starts to fling Skulker around, and Skulker goes flying into the watchtower and faces through the watchtower to then be meeting Danny and Tucker, who are again laying down on the ground, seemingly still asleep here. Sam makes her way back to the tower to try and warn Danny and Tucker about what's going on here, for Skulker to then green mist her in the face to cover her mouth. The gorilla makes its way, well, her technically, even though Samson is to at first be a male, and then we come to find out it's female. So in the later part of the episode, so the gorilla faces off against Skulker, and and then that leads to then Skulker kind of phasing out and disappearing, while the gorilla kind of falls into the wall and is smashing it. So Danny goes ghost because of the gorilla being there, and so Danny grabs the ghost after becoming Phantom and takes the gorilla back into its cage, and then is to be fairly upset with Sam, assuming that the reason why the gorilla had been freed was because of Sam. And so they want to go on and tattle on Sam, but then Sam has the photo of them sleeping together, so they're like, oh, okay, I guess we'll just kind of keep this a secret between us. So now at the Fenton Works, we have Connie, who's doing this interview with Maddie, and we have Jack that is going on and wanting to talk about the ghost hunting or the ghost gabber, and Jazz the whole time is like, put that thing away. So Jazz is also trying to bust up uh, her mother's resume by saying that she's coming up with a new form of self-generating energy, and but Maddie is going on and saying like, well, no, my real focus is on ghost hunting, and so Danny ends up bursting in on the interview, and so there is a bit of an exchange here where Danny goes on and talks about how they had gone to the zoo uh, at night alone, and we again go on to have Jack, who's going to the ghost gabber, and it ends up again saying "fear me," and so Jazz ends up changing the subject, like, well, hey, where were we? So Danny is desperately wanting to get some rest after facing off against that gorilla and putting him back into the cage. And Tucker's like, yeah, you can go on and get some rest, but you're only going to get 13 minutes worth. And so as Danny opens his door to face off against Skulker again, he's like, oh my god, he's very surprised, he's caught off guard. Skulker puts Danny in this net, and so here is where the Skulker is wanting to go on and put Danny into his collection and say who he is, to introduce himself here, and that he's a collector of things rare and unique. And all of a sudden, Skulker ends up stepping on Danny's rocket. He's like, oh, my rocket! And so Skulker was hoping that Danny was going to put up some more of a fight against him. And here's where Danny turns into Phantom. So Phantom then goes on and punches Skulker, and so we go on all of a sudden to have Jack and the family downstairs starting to hear some of the ruckus. And Jack possibly thinks that it's some ghost that is creating all that ruckus. But then both Tucker and both Sam come down to state that Danny is working out, and Maddie's like, well, he doesn't have any working out equipment, and Sam tells Maddie, it's like, well, like he borrowed some of it from me. So as Danny is to be showing, oh, my computer. So Tucker goes into the kitchen to come to find that Danny is to fall the from his room down to the kitchen and smashes into this table. And both Skulker and both Danny are now facing off again. So Danny and Skulker phase through this wall to go into this other room, and then Connie, Jack, and the rest of the family make their way into the kitchen where Tucker and Sam are, and Sam ends up pretending that he had just chopped this table in half, and so and talked about ghost rats or rats, and so that was the sound that was going on there. So Connie, when going on and is starting to think that Danny could be more interesting than Maddie is, but the only problem is that he's not the right gender for their magazine. But she wants to go and investigate him anyways. So, but back with Danny being choked by Skulker, Skulker is going on and putting Danny into the portal because he's going to send him back to where Skulker can collect Danny in his cage. So Sam tries to stop Skulker. It's like, well, hey, uh, you know what you're doing is wrong. Like putting people in cages. Like, haven't you seen Samson the ape? And how have you seen that it's wrong for him to be in a cage? So Skulker is looking at Sam. It's like, well, I should be, and Sam is like, ashamed of yourself. So Danny is to all of a sudden get away from um Skulker, as Skulker had gone on to uh mm, find that uh Tucker had this PDA, and so he's like, wow, this PDA like has all this weird technology that's more far advanced than I have. So he attached it onto his wrist, and we all of a sudden have Skulker that is a way better predator than he was prior. And as Danny is to try and go on and attack Skulker here, Skulker is to all of a sudden have these blast weapons that end up rendering Danny to be kind of chained up here. So Danny is upset with Tucker for making the bad guy even worse. And Skulker is to want to go on and put in the final blow, but then all of a sudden the PDA is telling Skulker that he needs to go on to this other appointment, so all of a sudden he's flying off. So Danny is like, "Oh my god, thank God that happened, because I now need the time to figure out what the heck is going on here." So Danny goes back to his room, realizing that it's in shambles, as Maddie and Connie are making their way to Danny's room. Danny is to try to come up with every excuse for them to not come through the door because his room is completely destroyed. So we next go into Casper High. And so every time that Danny has an appointment for something, Skulker is to appear. So as Danny makes his way to finding out that Tucker has yet another PDA, and Danny is just so afraid at this point that any time Skulker is just going to appear. So as Skulker is to seemingly be lurking in the shadows behind Danny. So Danny goes on to make his way from class to class, and he's going through the lockers, and all of a sudden Skulker appears, and he's to be chained up by Skulker, and all of a sudden the PDA tells Skulker that he needs to go to this appointment to look up things about the purple back gorilla. So Skulker leaves, the chain breaks, and they're going on and they're finding out what the PDA is to say for Danny to do next. And Danny's like, well, hey, we're going to have to scrap that. And we're going to go on and try to figure out and strategize this whole Skulker thing. So they make their way to these bleachers to try to figure this out. and Skulker then appears. And then also Skulker then disappears and then flies off. So they go on to realize that every time Skulker is looking at this PDA and needing to then follow it. So they then put it together that Skulker is going by some schedule that was to originally have been Danny's. So if anything, they're going on and they're figuring out a way to beat this schedule, to beat then Skulker. So Danny doesn't appear where he's supposed to, and instead, Skulker then is to find Dash at this locker room and confuse Dash with Danny. So Skulker then blasts Dash, and as soon as then Skulker is then to find uh, Danny and Tucker, he then realizes that he is to need to go on and go to the Museum of National History. So as Danny is to realize that at some point they're needing to go to the gorilla habitat, Danny is to state that uh, he's like, all right, well, I'm going to do something a little bit ahead of schedule. So as Skulker arrives to the gorilla habitat, he is now like waiting forever for Danny to appear. So Skulker is now upset and he lashes out at the gorilla and he's like, man, like you were the reason why this guy was supposed to be here. And then all of a sudden it appears that the gorilla is not really the gorilla, it's all of a sudden Sam and Tucker. And all of a sudden, as Skulker is to get surprised by this, he ends up popping out all this weaponry, and his PDA ends up going off, and now all of a sudden, Skulker is now forced into doing push ups. So, Skulker is like, God, make this stop because he can't control it, he can't fix this, he can't make this go away, and Danny is the only one who can go on and make this go away by tackling Skulker and punching and hitting him. So, as we all of a sudden have Skulker that is whipping out uh, this weapon, we then have Tucker who's looking at the planner and is to say that that Skulker is going to polish his armor, and then all of a sudden the armor is being polished, and so it's kind of hitting Skulker in the face. So we all of a sudden have Danny's final plan is to try and talk to the gorilla and do all these hand signals, and the gorilla goes on and appears and starts to fight Skulker here. So the gorilla starts to take down Skulker and starts tearing him apart piece by piece, punching, kicking, having him lose an arm. And so finally, as the head goes flying, we have Tucker that realizes that Skulker had this armor and he didn't quite understand why a ghost needed armor. Come to find out in the headpiece, there is a much smaller ghost inside of this armor, and they end up going on to putting this ghost into the thermos and beating this ghost here. And Danny is to go on after this and just be kind of relieved and just be done with all of this. But Sam is like, well, hey, you didn't get anything for your report. And so Danny is like, well, hey, we beat the bad guy, we saved the gorilla. That's all the report that I really need. But as Danny is to go on and look ever so closer at the gorilla, he realized that everyone was assumed that this gorilla was actually to be a he, but the gorilla is actually a she. I'm sorry if you're hearing any barking in the background. There's nothing I can do about it because one of my neighbors just released this dog out and he's barking forever. So that's great. So, but the Genius magazine comes to go on and do this article about them finding out about this gorilla being a she. And so Lancer is going on and reading this article and saying that Samson is to actually be a Delilah. So they changed the name, I guess, of the gorilla. So, and they're like, well, hey, why is it that no one bothered to have realized what the gender of this gorilla was? And Danny ends up telling Lancer, it's like, well, I guess they were trying to respect her privacy. And so, come to find out after all, it seems that Danny was getting a better grade in this class and it ended up being a C. And so because Danny has gone on and gotten just a C on this report, and he's just like, well, man, I need to get this aggression out, and he sees the box ghost. He's like, all right, I'm going ghost, and so like that kind of just ends this episode. So I'm gonna get the heck out of here so I can put this video out, and also this dog is consistently in the background barking. So I'm gonna get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.